Hey everyone, and welcome to GMAC Tours. My name is Eric Lucrezia, the founder of Candidate Coach. I run an admissions consulting firm, a boutique firm that helps people applying for master's, MBA programs, and sometimes even bachelor's programs. And I'm going to give you some tips of what to do after today, right? When you come to these events, you want to be as prepared as possible. Now, it's a little bit late today, but you may have some downtime if you, while you're waiting to speak to somebody, where you can do a little bit of research in case you didn't do so already, just to be a little bit more up to speed on the schools with whom you're talking to. Yes, you're here to learn things and to get information, but it always looks better if you have a good baseline and you kind of have the basics already out of the way, and you can ask some higher level questions and show that you're really motivated and you've done your homework. That's how you make a good impression, kind of in a nutshell. And next time you attend one of these events, you'll do that a little bit more deeply. Really look at the list of all the schools that'll be in attendance and really take a good 20-30 minutes for each school and go through the website, any schools that you're considering, and look at all the different details of the program so the questions that you ask can be a little bit more higher level. And it really shows how motivated you are. All right, so starting point from at the end of this event. What's really good to do is to follow up. You want to follow up with everyone you've met. So, networking is obviously a key skill in business, and you want to grow your network while you're going through this journey. We'll come back to network a bit later. So what you can do is if you're having a conversation, kind of a one-on-one conversation with any of the school reps, you can ask, would it be okay if I added you on LinkedIn? Or could I follow up by email? Any of that kind of stuff, just to see what they're comfortable with. Almost always they'll say yes to at least one of those two or both. But I think LinkedIn is a nice bonus because LinkedIn is such a powerful tool that is not just a catalog of the people you know professionally. It is a way to learn things. It is a way to demonstrate what you care about, what's important to you, what you think about. And also it is sending a signal to the world of what kind of a networker you are. And business schools like that, businesses, companies like this. So this will really work to your advantage. All right, so the follow-up piece is just a simple message, whether it's by LinkedIn or by email, just saying it's really great to meet you. And I have a couple more questions I'd like to follow up with. And really simply, if you'd like to set up a call or that kind of thing to go into more detail, that's what their job is. These recruiters and admissions committee people, they're there to provide information on their program. Of course, it is expected that you've gone through the website and you're not asking questions that are very easily answered by looking on the website. You want to show that you take initiative. But often things are not entirely clear. You may have some very specific questions based on your career goals. And that's how you get things really clear and understand which schools are the best fit for you, but you're also building a relationship with these schools. And that's what it's all about. There are every year hundreds, depending on the program, maybe thousands of people applying that have very competitive GMAT scores, but how do you stand out? Well, one great way to stand out is to have a relationship with the people who work there. So when they actually receive your official application submitted, it's like, oh, I know this person. We met here or there, we've had a few conversations, they showed up at a coffee chat, we did an online tour, they maybe visited campus. So that relationship really carries you a long way. And then always at the end, just a quick line in that follow-up message, for your convenience, I've enclosed my CV or resume. Same thing, depending on what you want to call it, if you're in North America or the rest of the world. So look, they're always going to ask for your resume if they don't have it already, and make life simple for them. Avoid them having to ask for it, and show that you know how things work by just automatically providing your CV or resume pretty much with every communication, especially with anyone you've never spoken to before. Just assume they're going to ask for it if you're talking to somebody who works at a business school. Even if it's an alum, you can ask if you prefer for an alum. But definitely any professional staff, you want to say, for your convenience, I've enclosed my CV. Just help save a step, and they need to see this stuff anyway. And by the way, it doesn't have to be the final version of your CV. We know that it's a process that you're going to be working on as you're going through the application journey, and something that is at least passable, that is up to date with correct contact information is good enough for now, and that's something you'll tweak before you submit officially, but just something you can work with. All right, next, you're going to need a roadmap. What does that mean? I mean, the admissions journey for business school, whether it's master's, MBA, whatever, if you're doing it right, is a complex and a long one, and for a few reasons. One, there are tons of options out there, and it's hard to know where to start. First of all, tons of options in terms of which schools to go to. You may have a short list in mind of schools you're interested in, but there's probably a bunch more that are also just as good of a fit for you that you probably haven't considered yet. So the options tend to grow. But then other things about like how to start. You go for the essays first, you're going to work on the GMAT, GRE, executive assessment, or something else. You're looking at rankings, accreditation, scholarships, loans, visas, maybe when is the right time to visit campus. And there's also tons of information out there that can be conflictual at times, and you want to, of course, avoid any fake news. I would definitely recommend staying away from the blogs like Reddit. There's a lot of bogus information out there that I highly recommend you stay away from. Go right to the source. Speak to the people who work at the schools. Anyway, people often underestimate the time it takes to prepare those exams. For a native English speaker, it's probably at least 2 or 3 months of solid preparation. If English is not your first language, maybe 4 or 5, maybe 6. Also, you want to estimate on taking the exam probably at least twice. It is not an issue to take the exam more than once, but which one to take? Most schools accept both the GMAT or the GRE, and there's some schools that accept other tests as well. There's also the idea of a test waiver, which could be an option for you that might be interesting. There also may be some drawbacks to accepting that waiver. It's something to reflect on and perhaps discuss with somebody who knows what that could mean if you don't have a test. That could affect things like scholarships or possibly even employment later, depending on the kind of job you're looking for. But even more than what people underestimate in terms of prep time for the exams, people also really underestimate the process of not only finding the schools that are the right fit, but also figuring out who they are and what they want to do with their lives. I mean, it really is a journey. And so the roadmap is something that you do early on, and you sort of like a retro planning is one way to call it, where you kind of start with the destination or the end point and work your way backwards. And it requires understanding how long certain things take to construct a sort of plan or a map that will keep you on task and make sure you're doing things in the right order, focusing on the right priorities first. So that's something that I do with my clients early on in the process to make sure they're going to get things in, submitted on time in the right admissions round, and have a very fully ready application, and hopefully get some scholarships too. So, the question about when is the right admissions round to apply in is a good one, and I think there's a lot of mythology surrounding the rounds. Most admissions directors at the top schools that I've talked to say there's not much difference between round 1 and round 2. Round 3 can get a little more complicated, especially if you're applying as an international student, visas and so forth. But really, the best round to apply in is the one in which you're truly ready with the best version of your essay, CV, and so forth that you can possibly submit. All right, once you've thought through all that, it's time to get organized. Because as you're doing the research, in a process I call researching and soul searching, all the information you're going to be picking up starts to mix together a bit. By the time you've looked at the 4th or 5th school's website, it kind of gets all confusing, right? So I usually recommend using something like Excel or an equivalent spreadsheet. Preferably, I use Google Docs, or Google Sheets, I should say. This way you can access it from your phone or wherever you happen to be. It's shareable in real time, especially if you're working with somebody. That's great. You make a column for all the programs you're considering. I always recommend starting off like casting the net out wide, good 20-something schools to consider in the first place. And then as you go deeper into the research, you narrow down. Probably you're going to throw an application in for 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 schools. Beyond that, I think is too much. I think, the application, each of them takes a lot of time and reflection. There's a certain cost associated with each application. And so I think it's good to front load your research and to be applying to the schools that truly correspond to your goals, values, learning style, and where the schools have the expertise in the career field that you're targeting. So really getting organized with something like Google Sheets is great. I use Google Docs folders, one for each school. Some people even set up an email address that is specifically for the admissions process. It could be like, if you use Gmail, one little trick is you can just do a plus sign with whatever you want, and that will create a folder in your Gmail account where you can keep things separate. So for example, one of my email addresses, eric.lucrezia@gmail.com. I have one that's Eric Lucrezia plus, like the plus sign, schools@gmail.com, and that automatically puts anything that I send into schools, like requesting your brochure and so forth, into a separate folder. That's a little trick you can do to stay organized and avoid getting spammed, because unfortunately, once you get on a mailing list, you'll start hearing a lot from these schools, especially if they're very interested in your profile. Okay, next, I wanted to mention personal branding. think this is something super important. And it's not just about your resume or your essays, but it's really everything. Definitely your LinkedIn. And you might have to think about how do you represent yourself online. We've all had social media, some of us since we were very small, in your generation probably. And so maybe there's some things you don't necessarily want schools to see. And so might mean doing a Google of your own name and see what comes up, and maybe just clean things up a little bit to look a little bit more professional. Obviously, when schools welcome applicants into their programs, they become part of that brand, and they want to know, just like a company would, how is this person, this student in this case, going to represent themselves and by extension represent us? So they definitely will check you out. For sure, your LinkedIn, and very likely just Google your name as well. But personal branding goes much more beyond that. I describe personal branding in 3 ways, either in person, on paper, or in pixels. And so in pixels, you get the idea it's online. Could be your LinkedIn profile, could be other social media, could be Zoom meetings, anything that's online, and how you present yourself. On paper, very likely your resume, your CV, and in person, well, just what it sounds like. And so how you present yourself, how you dress, how you speak, all those things will play into human connection and fit, that you will fit into the community of the program and the school that you're applying for. Okay, now back to LinkedIn and networking. You really want to start to use LinkedIn like a pro. Like I said, it's a super powerful tool that is it's far beyond a catalog of your contacts. It really is signaling that you can send to the schools about what you think about, what's important to you, and the kind of professional you are. First thing to do is to get your profile up to date, get a nice picture on there that looks professional but friendly, welcoming. Don't ignore the banner picture up top as well. It just looks lazy if you don't have one. And then you have your about section to work on. Don't forget, of course, your experience, education. Then there's skills. Good rule of thumb, I think you should have at least as many skills as years you've been alive, simply stated. So for you guys, probably 20, 25 skills is enough. The max you can put is 50. It might be a bit much at 20 years old to say you have 50 skills. Let's leave some room for growth. But beyond having the skills there, it's one thing for you to say, hey, I'm good at accounting. It's quite another thing if you have endorsements from 60 people that say, this person's good at accounting. It's a lot more credible when you have a whole community saying, yeah, this person has this skill. So besides adding the skills, think about asking people to endorse your skills. Now, I get that this feels awkward, especially at first, but you'll start to realize this is what we do. And so you want to make sure you have enough endorsements. And by the way, recommendations, maybe 3 is good at this stage in your career. And finally, I'll just mention, don't ignore the power of the group sections, which not only, so at the very bottom, there are various groups divided into a few different categories. One is influencers, like think of, Ariana Huffington or Obama, famous people that have things to say about business, society, politics. Another one is more like interests. That can range from photography to France to Italian wine lovers, and a whole host of professional things too. These are things that kind of shape you as a human, not just a professional robot, let's say. Then there are schools, and a lot of people make the mistake they only follow the schools they went to. No, this is where you follow any school that's interesting to you. For sure, any school that's up for consideration for your application. But also schools that you may not have any interest in applying to, but just respect, like who knows, Harvard, MIT, London Business School. They are producing great research, and they have an influence in society and business and politics. So if you're interested in business school and a degree in business, these are great institutions to follow. And this will mean that on your newsfeed, you'll be learning things about these schools. And for sure, if it's a school you're thinking about applying to, next time you talk to an admissions rep at one of these MBA fairs, you meet an alumni at a coffee chat, or you're just talking to somebody you happen to meet on the train who went to this school, you can be informed and be much more up to date on what's going on. They'll speak about new scholarships, new partnerships, new programs, any kind of initiative. So it's a great way to be informed, and you can show your true interest and excitement for the schools that you're considering. LinkedIn's a really good tool for that. And besides schools, there's also companies. So same thing, follow any companies that you're even considering or interested in. So that's a good amount of stuff you can do pretty easily and have a nice functional profile. And then I would give a couple of pieces of advice related to this. And we're gonna wrap up in a couple of minutes to take some questions. I see a couple have come in. Feel free to pop your questions into the Q&A at any time, and once I finish up, I'll get to those. So I think you should adopt the habit of asking people if you can add them on LinkedIn pretty much at the end of any kind of professional conversation. Anyone, either in academia or career or anything, potentially could be a good contact for you for your career path in education. Adopt the habit of saying, hey, would it be all right if I added you on LinkedIn? So I think this is a great way to keep track of and keep in touch with people rather than email addresses, and it's probably less imposing or threatening perhaps for some people than asking for a phone number or WhatsApp, and it's definitely more professional than Instagram. So LinkedIn is just really meets that need. It sets the tone. Hey, I want to keep in touch with you for professional reasons. This is not a date. You know what I'm saying? So adopt that habit. I would say also have the app on your phone. And I say this often, you should check your LinkedIn as often as you check your Instagram. And if that sounds like too much, you check your Instagram too much. Now, I promise you what you can learn from your LinkedIn profile and feed and the contacts will be way more interesting than, pictures of people's cats. So I can't promote it enough. That will help you throughout this journey. A couple final tips in the few minutes that we have left. I'll mention your CV. 1 page is enough. In my opinion, if you're less than 30, you have no business having a 2-page CV. If you're an engineer, okay, you have to list all your projects, I get that. But if you're applying to business school, your CV is going to look different than if you're applying for a job. And so keeping it 1 page is nice. You have like a single snapshot, everything is visible there. If you happen to have quite a few experiences, you can sum it up with like relevant professional experience that indicates you might not be listing everything. And believe me, schools don't want to know everything. They want to know what's important. And you want to focus on leadership, teamwork, international exposure, any top ranked companies or schools that you might have been associated with, and for sure any quantifiable achievements. So keep that in mind. I'm going to pop over to see if I can answer one of these questions. So here's one here. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm going to try Beninia. Would you please advise me as an international student, which business school is the best in terms of cost and financing the MBA? And what is the best way to finance the MBA program in Europe? Well, listen, unfortunately, that's going to be a very tough question to answer in terms of cost and financing. The tuition prices are listed on the website of every school, so that's for you to do. And what you're going to pay in the end, is going to be, of course, depending on scholarships you may have been eligible for. And so the final price is not so clear. And of course, I just want to point out, you need to think about cost of living. So part of the research involves asking the schools or talking to people, using LinkedIn to speak to some current students that you can find or alumni to find out what they would spend typically on rent, living in that city or in that part of the world, rent, food, phone plan, gym membership. And let's not forget that business school is very much about networking. Especially at the MBA level, but even at the master's level, there's a lot of networking going on, and there's maybe events that you have to think about paying for that as well. So there's that. Following up with that question, I would say this. At these kind of events, you don't bring up money for 2 reasons. One, asking about tuition and asking about scholarships, especially scholarships, is just bad form. Like, first of all, it's proof that you haven't done your homework, you haven't looked at the website. Any school that you're interested in, you can look later on the website discreetly. Talking about money in the first conversation is just bad form, I would say. So leave that question aside for now. And another question that often comes up that I think is the wrong question to ask, I highly advise you don't ask anyone today, what is your minimum GMAT score? There is no minimum GMAT score at any school. You can speak about averages, because that's what it is. The schools really look at the holistic application, all the different pieces that go into the application, or they wouldn't be asking for these things. So there is no answer about a minimum score. So if you want to have a sense of the average score, you can ask that, but please do yourself a favor and do not ask about the minimum score. It makes you look uninformed. So those are the kind of 2 no-nos I would say for today. Oh, there's another question coming in from Camille or Camille. What advice would you give to someone about choosing the correct person for a reference? Very good question. There are 2 main things that you want to consider when choosing your references. One, they have to know you in a professional capacity. Now, if you're applying for a master's, that might be in an academic capacity as well. I know most of you are going for masters today. So that professional kind of relationship, and somebody that knows you well. So it's about proximity of relationship. Don't choose somebody because they have some kind of high status if they don't know you well enough. So Often that could also be a mentor or a tutor, or if it has to be something academic, there's some flexibility. But the website of each school usually spells this out very clearly, and it is going to be a little bit different at every single school. So there is no one answer for everything here. And if anything's not clear, that is the job of the admissions counselor, the recruiter, to answer those questions for you. But it's always your job first to look on the website and to try to find out as much as you can on your own. And then what's not clear, that's when you ask them. All right, so this is my website where you can find out about all that I do. You can see testimony from people who've worked with me before, all the different kind of services I provide, plus a lot of other free resources like blogs and videos that explain a lot of good information that would be really helpful on the journey. The other link I'm sharing is something called MBA Waves, which is a weekly vidcast. It's totally free. It's live. It's actually happening right now, but don't worry, it's also recorded and it's on YouTube. So you can go to mbawaves.com and you can see the lives. You can see the schedule coming up, and each week we dive into a topic like networking or using LinkedIn or writing your resume, or there's episodes that are dedicated to schools. So actually what's going on right now is Vanderbilt Owen. They're based in Memphis, Tennessee. They're a top 20 American business school. And next week is Berkeley Haas in California. We've had Cornell, we've had Bocconi, we've had HEC, lots of fantastic schools. So that's a free resource for you. You can check out the upcoming schedule and also watch all the past episodes on our YouTube channel. You should be able to also see the Candidate Coach link. And finally, I'm just going to add my email before I let you all go and meet with some great schools today. But cool. I can chat to everyone now. There's not a huge amount of schools today, so you should be able to work your way around the room and talk to everyone. And maybe you have like, 2 or 3, like, oh, I'm definitely interested in them, but these I don't care about. Go talk to them anyway. Every conversation you have is great practice for the schools that you do want. And you might be surprised that some school that you never thought would be a right fit for you is actually the best fit. So in the beginning, you definitely want to keep an open mind, cast that net wide, and then as you go into the research, you narrow down until you apply to that handful of schools that are the best fit for you. So unless there are any other questions, that's a wrap for me. Enrico asks, can I please repeat the main categories on the CV? I didn't say categories on the CV. I was talking about a couple of things you want to highlight. Like the categories, I consider the header, which is up at top, has your name and a bunch of other stuff. Then probably the next section most people put at this stage, if you're applying for a master's, is the education section, followed by work experience, which obviously would include internships and so forth. Then usually there's a skills section, and skills, I can think of 3 subsections. Usually it's language skills, computer skills, and professional skills. And then beyond that, there's some optional sections you might want to consider if you've had presentations, awards, scholarships, and so forth. Then finally, a very small section about personal interests. I shy away from the word extracurricular. I think it sounds kind of juvenile, but like personal interests, and put 2, 3, 4 max things that you're truly interested in. Don't put photography. Everyone with an iPhone is a photographer. If you're actually into photography, you probably have a specific genre that you're interested in, put that. But what I did say is things to highlight are international experiences, leadership, teamwork experiences. Then I mentioned any kind of brands, whether it's a recognizable company name brand or school brand. And finally, any quantifiable achievements, like you and your team increased sales by 15% year on year, something like that. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully this whole presentation was helpful, and I hope you guys have a great event tonight, and get in touch. I'd be happy to hear from you.